Hello? Can you hear me? Tell me in the chat if you can hear me. Gotta mess with the piano a little bit. Sorry, I wasn't quite prepared this time. Ate lunch a little bit. I will just be a minute. I will be right back. I started the stream just so people don't get confused about whether there's a stream or not. There is. It will just be a couple of minutes and I'll be right back. One moment. Okay, here we are. I hope people are still watching. I just gotta plug in my laptop and then it'll be off. I'll just read any. Yeah. I'm a bit sleep deprived, but hopefully I will be able to manage whatever crazy requests you guys come up with. So should be fun. And there's a surprise coming later. Well, actually, maybe I should mention it now because it might influence like scheduling and such. So I'm gonna launch a Patreon fairly soon, and one of the rewards will be access to weekly Zoom group meetings to be held immediately after the live streams. So anyone who's interested can join a weekly Zoom group meeting. Now this time will be, these first 2 times will be a little bit special. It'll be sort of a bit of a trial. So I'll make these Zoom group meetings available to everyone these first 2 times. So you don't have to be a patron. So you can all like come hang out with me on Zoom after the stream. Anyway, and that will be in about 1.5 hours. So I'm making the streams half an hour shorter, and then I'm doing a 1 hour Zoom group meeting after. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so Darkness asks, how does one tackle resonance tuning in terms of how to move the tongue, mouth, etc.? What movements, physical actions do you do to strengthen the needed performance? Oh, is this a question about the countertenor singing? I'd guess it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, basically the way I approach countertenor singing is to start with root timbre. Well, actually, before even that, I will tend to start by trying to make a falsetto not sound winded. Now, I've been calling this exasperated, actually, because I thought it meant the same thing. Because when people have an exasperated tone, they have a bit of this like winded quality in the tone, and they have that in their falsetto often. This, this kind of thing, right? This quality, which sounds like you're winded, right? So I try to start by eliminating that, and I do that with a bright, breathy sigh like this, ha, ha, and ha. And once it's no longer winded, which will also typically involve reducing the volume a little and then bringing it back up by opening the mouth more, adding twang and all of those usual things, right? But once you have this baseline of a bright falsetto that would be suitable for Disney princess singing or bright pop singing or Celtic songs or something, once you have that, you can strengthen your falsetto by working first on head register involving whoop timbre, right? So you go up here, say, oh, oh, and you take that down, oh, right? So now I'm at E4 in whoop timbre, and then I try keeping that spacious quality while changing to the vowel E, like this. So that gives me a very dark E, right? A dark E in whoop timbre. Then I try to brighten it while maintaining the whoop timbre. So, right? It's still in whoop timbre, but it's now brighter. Compare to E. And this you can then open up to open vowels by approaching yell timbre, right? Right? And this makes it very related to basically call register, right? It makes it so similar in shape. So I can basically just do that wasn't very good. Without really changing my mouth shape much. Right? So it's very closely related to call register. So that's basically how I'd approach this part that I call the lower middle voice. Right, now for the upper middle voice, which is roughly from A4 and up, there I tend to use second form and third harmonic tuning a lot, which hopefully most of you know what it is, but otherwise you'll figure it out as I demonstrate. So I might go, no, that's still yell, hang on. That quality there. Now what a lot of people do instead is they darken a lot and go this way. But that way they wind up singing to the floor and it sounds all right. What they're actually doing there is second form and second harmonic tuning. But yeah, I prefer second form and third harmonic tuning in most cases here. Actually, even for the O, I think. I don't know, I guess I could go either way with that one. Depends on the sound I want. But yeah, so that's for your upper middle voice. You want to switch to second form and tuning. Right? So that basically means you're going to be working with some variant of the vowel Ö. Now for the E vowel, basically the same exact shape as for the A vowel. It's just for the E vowel, I tried to make that second form a little bit more prominent. I don't know how well that's translating over like Zoom, because it's a fairly subtle difference. But within a phrase, it sounds convincing enough. Now E just like stays in whoop the whole time, as does U. So it's really just O, A, and E you gotta worry about in this range. Then as you get higher, you transition. Oh, actually, I should mention though that E tends to, well, actually both E and U tend to give them this sort of twangy quality in the upper middle voice, just to bring them in line with the open vowels. And then I go back to the spacious quality for head register, right? So if I have in this middle register, So that's the lower middle voice. If I do a so I'm not doing but right. And then for a head register, you basically transition from this triangle equality to this very whoopy head register. So if I do both transitions, right, and I wouldn't normally take if I'm like doing some countertenor aria, I would usually be in call register by the time I get to E4. I wouldn't like, sometimes I do take, like if it's a quieter volume, I may take, but I do actually sometimes take call register all the way up to A flat 4 in countertenor singing, or even higher if it's like more contemporary styled countertenor singing, like if I'm singing the songs from Phantom of the Opera sung by Christine, right? There I might take it even higher. I think I take it up to D5 or something. But anyway, let's see. How does one tackle singing countertenor voices when going around? Okay, so that's where I will actually change to modal. Now, the golden age sopranos and mezzos would actually just change abruptly. They don't like do a smooth transition. They just disguise the voice crack by interrupting the legato briefly, or using a consonant, like using the consonant trick or something like that. They actually don't make the transition smooth. You can hear Maria Callas actually sometimes has an outright voice cracks when she goes between middle voice and you know, call register for the low part. Right? So if I'm singing, for example, hang on. I just ate, so there's like a whole bunch of phlegm in my throat. Well, because I ate lasagna with like a proper bechamel sauce and like lactose or something. Like dairy products always cause me to just get this flood of phlegm. It's very annoying. But so you may hear me clearing my throat quite frequently today. But aside from that, my voice is in pretty good condition, fortunately. So so there I switch, right? Now I'm not in middle voice anymore. That's my call register, right? No, I would switch on ja actually. It's been forever since I sang this aria. I barely remember my registration. So this is still in middle voice, right? That's upper middle voice. Before I was trying to go for head register, but that's too dark, right? So I might go into call register there, I don't know. Right, so if you're only going a bit low in pitch, then the key is really to develop a strong lower middle voice, which basically means you need the same mouth shapes as you'd use for call register. You actually need that for upper middle voice as well, right? If I do, that's basically like going. Well, that was wasn't very smooth, but you get the idea. It's like the same transition as girare in call register. It just takes place a bit higher than girare would in classical singing, but maybe about where I would usually do it for contemporary belting, actually. Well, no, slightly lower than that, I guess. But anyway, you'll also notice I stayed in middle voice even for the high notes there, actually, like all the way up to the E5, and that's actually important. You gotta postpone the transition to head register quite a bit. So classically, a soprano's secondo passaggio, which is where they transition from middle voice to head register, is typically described as being somewhere in the range of like D sharp 5 to F sharp 5, which is quite high, right? So you gotta learn to carry your middle voice quite high. That's not easy, right? Middle voice, by the way, for those who are not initiated in classical terminology, middle voice is just another word for a falsetto. It's like, there are some people who make a distinction between, is it breathy or is it not breathy? No, it's just like, it's the same thing, okay? Like, falsetto / middle voice can be breathy or it can be clear, but it's, it's, so you gotta learn to take your falsetto quite high without going into head register, and without losing the classical sound, right? That's actually pretty difficult. It's like, it will feel sort of belty in a sense. It will not feel belty in terms of effort level, but it will feel belty in terms of how much, like, of how much of a stretch it is in terms of the vocal tract shape, of how like extreme the position is. It has this quality of something fairly extreme. Anyway, also, as a follow-up, do operatic countertenors sing with a type of mixed voice? In a sense, still confused as to how to get squillo in head register. No, it's not really, well, it's sort of, you could call it reinforced falsetto, I guess. Like the middle voice, you could also call it a reinforced falsetto. But it's sort of reinforced a bit differently from how you would do it in contemporary. There's less compression, it's mostly just resonance tuning and twang. In the low larynx. But yeah. That sounds so sick, you said. What is, was it my countertenor singing, or, I have a question. I aspire to sing like Adam Lambert, but my singing is quite heavy and strained still, even though I've been singing for quite a while now. Any tips to lighten up my voice like Adam? Yeah, so basically for that, you'll need a high larynx and a lot of pharyngeal narrowing. So you'll need pharyngeal voice, and you'll need a fairly bright pharyngeal voice. Now the exercise I like to use for pharyngeal voice, it assumes you already have a very well developed chest register, right? That you can do this. Ya, 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 and that you can do it basically easily. Like that it's just, nothing to you to do that, right? And then add cry quality to it. Ya, ya, ya. So now I have cry register, right? Ya. And then you brighten that and soften it a lot, right? Ya, 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 ya. But without adding a restrained quality, right? Don't do ya, ya. Now it's restrained, right? Ya, ya. It should still sound open and unrestrained, right? So once you have that, ya, ya, and well, brighten it some more actually. Ya, 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 ya. Then you can just slide up into falsetto. Ya, and then as you slide back and forth a couple of times, it will merge. If you have the right cry register sound there, like this really bright, light cry register, it will just merge. Ya, ya, and then you get this sound. Right, and then you'd want to brighten that a bit more to get to Adam Lambert's level of brightness. This is really he sings very, very bright. So lots of twang. Let me see if I can get it closer to his sound by really sort of imitating this Valley Girl accent actually, right? Ya, 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 ya. Yeah, right, and that gives me a fairly easy F sharp 5 there at the top. Still doesn't sound like Adam Lambert. I haven't really practiced voice impressions of Adam Lambert, unfortunately, so I can't tell you more precisely what he's doing. But I can tell you that it's some variant of pharyngeal voice, and it's a very bright variant of pharyngeal voice. But it's also actually fairly strong. It's probably stronger than what I just did there, actually. It's probably sings a bit louder. I remember doing a Zoom meeting right after an hour-long YouTube live stream. I hope that will not be too strenuous on your health. It won't be. I mean, I can just take a pause. I can just announce that there'll just be a 10-minute intermission or something. But yeah, anyway. Gigi Bond says, hi there. Hi there. Masted, I remember asking a little about it on Reddit and rewatching the old interview with Greg, but how does Greg do the falsetto mix? I think I got the clear sounding falsetto, what you call head voice. So a clear sounding falsetto is not what I call head voice, right? So if I do, I still just call that falsetto. All of that falsetto to me. I don't really use the term head voice actually. I try to avoid it and use head register instead, just because head register hasn't become corrupted. It's like I made up that term to replace the original meaning of head voice, but now head voice has just come to mean a clear falsetto, which annoys me a bit. But I only use head register to refer to this whoopee quality. This kind of thing. That's head register as I use the term. Anyway, clear sounding falsetto. Yeah. So I assume you mean like the whoopee one, which he also does in middle voice, and I identified it based on that because it's based on like not having a spacious quality, not having the tongue and palate separation. So if I find that quality. Is this where you sort of wound up? You wound up with this drum group. From there, you just like open. If it's bright like that, if it's not, which will be difficult to work with. Start from a sort of bright one that you can do with a smaller jaw separation, actually, and still find whoop with it. And then from there, you just open up. Yeah. Right, and then you get this very easy. But it's this is more suitable, I'd say, for finding the open, like finding yell-tuned pharyngeal voice than F2H3 tuned pharyngeal voice. And if I'm looking for pharyngeal voice, I'm usually looking for the F2H3 tuned one. So, yeah, that's the way you can do it. So, so the key though is to be able to produce the whoop without much jaw separation, so that it's quite bright, because that means that you have a lot of leeway. Like you can get a lot of mileage out of just opening the mouth more. Whereas if the mouth is already quite open, then you can't get a lot out of it, right? If I'm doing woo, woo, I just don't get to an open vowel there. Woo, it's just like it's just stuck in, you know, the same quality. But if I have which is way brighter, you know, the second formant is way higher. It's less of an ooh and more of an ooh, right? So yeah. Then I find it easily, just by opening the mouth. Okay. And don't open it too gradually, actually. I'd say like be pretty sudden with it, because you'll get like disheartened if you open it gradually. Because as you're opening it gradually, you're of course leaving the whoop tuning behind, you know. And then you get to this weak quality before you've made it into yell tuning. And then it gets louder again when you find the yell tuning. But if you're sort of having trouble finding the yell tuning, that would just make it feel, you know, deflating. So try just like jumping from the whoop tuning to the yell tuning. Coach, sometimes I sing really good, but after a few days I forgot to sing. What is it always happening with me? Is it normal? What am I missing? Please help me. This is not very specific. I'll need a bit more. I'll need more details. Is high mixed voice just head voice that just matches the tonal quality of the chest? I mean, louder and sharper in tone. Well, no, actually no. there are 3 different things people talk about as mixed voice, and what you just mentioned is one of them. But I would just call that a reinforced falsetto, right? If I'm doing something like, forgive me, girl, that's falsetto at the top there, right? It's just a very bright, sharp falsetto. And I'd call that reinforced falsetto. I wouldn't call that mixed voice. Now, I do manage a smooth transition there. I think I'm passing through pharyngeal voice or something. Yeah, that's not mixed voice as I would use the term. Then there's some people refer to pharyngeal voice as mixed voice, and that was actually the original meaning of the term mixed voice. We can discern this because that French word voix mixte or something, I don't know how they pronounce that. I'll just write it in the chat, which means I have to pull up the on-screen keyboard. This term I just sent in the chat. That term was basically used as synonymous with vocefaringea, which also has a French term for it, another unpronounceable French term. But these were used synonymously, and this refers to a classical technique. This basically refers to how operatic tenors sang in the late bel canto period, which was before these romantic tenors came about with their chest voice tenor C5s. So that's the original meaning of mixed voice. But since then, mixed voice has basically become associated with what SLS teaches. And SLS teaches something based more on restraint, right? Narrow vowels, restraint, all of that. That's what mixed voice has come to mean. Less this that's not really what they teach, right? It's more like that's sort of more in the sort of usual meaning of mixed voice. Oh, thank you. My first super chat. Gaga. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I hope I am. This is for your recent excellent explanation videos that are concise and backed up properly. Thank you and keep up the great work. I will. Thank you. How do I? I'll just send a heart. Oh, okay, I can't do that. Oh God. Oh yeah, it's still. Hang on. I just accidentally closed the chat so I can. Yeah, now I can see the chat again. Okay. Can I press that celebrate button? No, it's not a button. Okay, it doesn't do anything. Okay. Zoom is confusing me here. Not Zoom. OBS is sorry. Anyway. Yeah. Thanks a lot for the €20. Where were we? So mixed voice. So it refers more to that sort of thin quality than the open quality, that sort of narrowed, restrained quality, right? And that restrained quality is what I call mixed voice in my system as well, right? And this other quality I call pharyngeal voice. And this restrained quality is actually built from your modal voice, right? And when SLS teachers teach it, they'll use these exercises that start from your modal voice and then they go like, how do they go? No, that's a different one. I'm mixing up two. They'll go like, right, and other exercises like that, which I've modified to make it stronger, because I'm like, we don't need to make the mixed voices that restrained. It doesn't need to be inefficient. But actually, I was just pharyngealizing it. But that's not what SLS teachers wind up doing. So I go more phlegm. So that's sort of so that's built on your modal voice. It's not the it's not the falsetto made to sound strong. It is and it's not just like making the falsetto match the tone of the chest voice. It's you build it from chest voice. And actually, like nowadays, I would say most people are stuck. Like most beginners are stuck in mixed voice and don't really have much of a chest voice and would need to develop a chest voice. This was probably different in a time when people were less shy, right? Nowadays, everyone is anxious and has like 50 different neuroses. And so they need a lot of help to just like unfold a little bit, to, you know, to let loose a bit. And until that, they'll just be stuck in mixed voice for like everything they do. And so like most likely, unless you're sort of highly atypical for the time you live in, mixed voice is probably like what you're actually gravitating towards anyway. Like I'd say about 90%, well no, 95% even of the students I get start out by being just stuck in mixed voice. And only like of the remaining, most of like, well, I'd say of the remaining 5%, there's sort of an even split of those who can do chest voice and mixed voice, and those who are stuck in chest voice. So those who don't like, those who can't produce mixed voice are like 1 in 40 students or something. It's like, it's pretty rare. It's like most are stuck in mixed voice and can't do chest voice at this point. But mixed voice doesn't automatically mean you can sing high. That's the thing. And mixed voice can still be poorly coordinated. I can be in this narrowed, restrained coordination like this. And this is just a bad mixed voice. It's still a mixed voice, but it's just a bad mixed voice and it won't go high, right? And it's basically needing more twang, right? Whereas if I do, you know, it's just gonna get horribly unstable and crack. So mixed voice doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to sing high. It's not like you just learn mixed voice and there's a magic pill that just fixes all your range issues and all your technical problems. It's sort of, people often talk about it as if it were basically this magic cure for everything, but it's not, right? You can have a mixed voice that's just bad, right? And that's quite widespread. Anyway, my high school vocal teacher taught us to sing with this opera voice. It makes me feel bad. Sing pop song. I mean, if you have a high school teacher who can teach you a proper opera song, that's actually quite precious and valuable, and actually more transferable to pop than a lot of this academic version of voice teaching. But it was probably like the academic version of an opera voice, not the real thing, right? So the real thing is like if you're doing. Whereas the academic version is much more restrained. Right, and it's small and you know, very sort of introverted. But if they can teach you this big extroverted sound, that's actually like pretty transferable to contemporary singing, because you'll learn basically a dark version of belting, you'll develop a strong chest register, you'll develop like clarity and brilliance in tone. But most likely they've taught you an academic version, like they've taught you how to sing like an academic, which is what I call it. You know, I basically use the term academic as a slur at this point, especially when it comes to voice teachers. And to singing, it's so if they've taught you this like restrained quality, I mean like this shy version of classical singing, like this. Come again, sweet love doth now invite thy graces that refrain to do me to delight. If they've taught you that, that's garbage. You can just throw it out and you can just forget everything they told you. And then like practice shouting, right? Practice this. Right? Practice something like that, and that will set you in a way better direction for contemporary singing. Except that like pop singing too is becoming more and more academic, I feel like, which is very annoying. Anyway, how to improve vocal tonality. So actually there's, I released a video on this just earlier today. No, not today. That was yesterday at this point. I'm losing track of the date of day and night. Anyway, I released that yesterday, and you could check that out. But I will just build up on top of that with an extra exercise I didn't show there, right? Which is basically when doing this exercise I demonstrated there. Try making the NG sound as buzzing as possible before you open up to a vowel. And then you can get this really strong, clear quality. And just strengthening your voice will naturally just add a lot more treble to it. Even like it will just sort of trickle down to everything else you do vocally. Like everything will sort of bleed over into everything else, and you'll get a little bit more treble, a little bit more clarity, and a little bit more stability. What exercise can I do if I want to sing higher in head register? I cannot get through G#5, whatever registers I sing in. Well, okay, this is something I'm working on right now myself. Not very good at. I used to sing C6 on a daily basis, but then I sort of neglected it because I was like, okay, I gotta work on fundamentals now. This is just a sort of silly party trick that I don't have much use for in practice. But what I'd say is try working with inhale whistles first, and then go from there to whistle register, and then like try to blend that with your head register by like adding a lot of twang, adding a little bit of that whistle register compression to your head register, that sort of thing. And make sure you go into make sure that your in terms of like vocal track shaping, make sure your second formant drops below your octave overtone before you leave whoop timbre. That's very important. And what that basically amounts to is keep the mouth shape fairly narrow to facilitate this transition. But that's not for the like really high range, but that's as you're transitioning between head register and whistle register. Anyway. Last time you mentioned that the larynx position is related to the volume, which means that the larynx position is not necessary to increase the pitch. Yeah, so well, the larynx goes up a little bit on average when you raise the pitch, but there's a moment when it comes back down a little bit. Right, so very central to my whole technique is this concept of covering, right, which is this right, it's sort of darkened. Now, a lot of people think covering refers to something else, right? Because Pavarotti gave this very famous demonstration where he was like showing and they think that top transition, they think that that's what covering is. But that's actually called girare, or turning, right? Because there's a sense of the voice turning. Covering actually takes place before that, right? It's this transition. That's covering. Right, and some schools of thought advocate covering the entire range. I don't actually, because that sort of slurs your diction lower down. But it has its advantages as well. I don't entirely repudiate it, but I don't generally recommend it. But yeah, this concept of covering, I use that in contemporary music as well. I just do it higher in pitch, right? Right. And that actually allows the larynx to come down a little bit. Even though the pitch rises. And then after that, the larynx starts rising again. At least until you then do the second modification, girare, which I would do higher than that. If I'm doing contemporary, I would do it around C5. A bit higher, a bit lower, depending on the particular line in question. But for example, right, and that gives me access to very easy C5s, and it actually remains fairly easy, even considerably higher. Like I say, it remains easy until D5. Well, like including D5. It's like from E flat 5, it needs to be pretty precise and starts getting difficult. But up to here, That was not very good, actually. And I've just said it remained easy again. Yeah, it's a little bit sloppy. My energy levels are too low right now. But yeah, so basically you just narrow a little bit here, but the larynx I think actually comes down a little bit as well when you make this transition from from this open timbre to F2H, from yellow timbre to F2H3 tuning, I should say. Anyway, more questions. Why is it that my head voice slash falsetto is so strained? It takes a lot of effort to maintain even a B4 in a register, while my chest F4 or G4 is easier than that. Do you know why? Yeah, that's basically your upper middle voice is not very well coordinated. You need the so you just try dragging this quality up, right? Right, it will get sort of winded sounding, and that takes a lot more effort to produce. So you gotta like keep this gentle quality, and then make this modification. Right. So that's basically going from to and that's what allows you to tune F2H3, and that should help you a lot in the upper middle voice. I want to see a music tutorial on how to sing in mixed voice. Say, Get Social Anxiety. Is it a song name or anyway? You want the tutorial to tell people to get social anxiety, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty apt. That's pretty apt, actually. Anyway, I could sing in A4 as a male, but have to belt for it. But some of my favorite singers could easily sing it effortlessly without shouting or belting. Could you tell me how to make it less shouty? Yeah, so there are a bunch of different ways. If you only wanted a bit less shouty, you can add a sort of crying quality to it to make it into sub register, right? And what is a good sound to demonstrate that? We'll just do. What's a good song? Like, what's a good song where there's an A4 that's sort of light in that way without being ultra light? I don't know. This is awkward. I really should have songs prepared for this stuff. But I can. Well, actually, okay. I'll do a section from a song from Metal Gear Solid. Actually, Metal Gear Solid 3. I never played that video game series, but I love the song. So if I do it with like a full shouty quality. Right. Oh. One service, but no one hears when. Right. Actually, let's take the first part of that. Love my sweet soul. If I want to make it just a bit less shouty first, right, I add a sharp quality. Love my sweet soul. Love. You can hear it sort of sounds related to the shouty quality without actually having that aggressiveness to it. It's sort of like a mellow shout, but it's still very large. If you want it less large, you can go into mixed voice, which will be easiest if you close the vowels a bit, right, to something like an Left my sweet soul, need the bedclothes. Right, and you can make that lighter by raising the larynx, narrowing the pharynx a bit more. Hang on, let me try that. Left my sweet soul, neath the bedclothes. So that's one option. You could also do that while keeping it open. So if I take, that's a bit difficult at this pitch, but I'll try to do it. So now it's still open, but it still has this restrained quality. Now, if you don't want it to have a restrained quality, then we get into the even more difficult territory, which is basically, you can take the chest register all the way up to the A4 just barely, and you can make that quite soft. Let me see if I can do this today, because A4 really is on the border where like test registers start being not very doable anymore. But let me see. Left, left my sweet soul, need the bed clothes. Right? So I'm basically taking up this quality. Left, left, failed there. That's what I'm telling you. It's like, it's just bordering on where a test register is no longer feasible, right? Left my sweet, there we are. Left my sweet soul, right? You can do that, but that's really pushing it for this pitch. You can also develop your pharyngeal voice, right? Which is what I demonstrated earlier with this. Also difficult at the A4 though, but we'll see if I can manage that. No, overshooting. Left my sweet soul. Right. Left my sweet soul. Now I'm assisting it with a little bit of compression, but you know, you can do something like that. So basically brighten it a lot, raise the larynx a lot, narrow the pharynx a lot, all of that. But it is difficult if you want it very speech-like. Would flageolet development help in the expansion of range below the flageolet note range? Yeah, so basically the idea of getting whistle tone involvement would be to find the flageolet. I'd say for classical singing, it's probably a good idea to start going into flageolet around A5 or so, or at least you gotta add that sort of flageolet tension, what Greg calls the flage tension. You gotta add that around A5, even if you want to stay in like trained head register or something. If you want it to be reliable, you will need that. You'll need that compression in there. I've noticed that when trying to sustain yelly notes, it sounds good at first and then quickly becomes unstable. Is that due to bad support or something else going on? Do you mean that it becomes unstable while you're sustaining? Oh yeah, like not between notes, right? During the sustain. I guess you're probably losing the yell timbre. That like you're using a lot of energy to establish the yell timbre, but then that sort of fades away a little bit during the sustain. That's what I'd guess is happening. That's usually the case if people have trouble with stability in yell timbre. Because there's sort of a tendency to do a very, very slight diminuendo during a sustain, and that's natural in a sense. This is the sense of like just trailing off. But when you do a slight diminuendo, there's also a tendency to very slightly close the mouth and to like narrow the epiglottic funnel slightly less, and that way you basically lose the yell timbre. Anyway, I ran out of questions. Well, actually, so what you can do to fix that is basically make sure you keep the mouth open, maybe even open it slightly more during the sustain, just to compensate for the epilarynx opening very slightly. But this is a very subtle thing. You don't need to do it particularly drastically, because most likely it's only a very, very slight diminuendo. Anyway, any more questions? Not necessarily. You can actually reach all the way to up to E6 or even higher, staying in M2. This is quite difficult. I do have another question. Well, actually, when I say staying in M2, well, it would be in flageolet, which people sort of by convention classify as a type of M2. But you could argue that it would be more correct to call it M3. In which case, by E6, yeah, you probably do have some like partial vibrations thing going on. I do have another question. How to maintain vocal fry when going higher in range? I want to develop fry distortion. Right, so for that, I'm not very good at maintaining vocal fry higher in range for like purposes of, let's say, developing a chest fry mix, which is something I'm trying to learn, because I want to have learned it by the time I make my my voice types video. Uh, but I do have some, like I have some months ago, I think maybe a year ago even by now. Wow, time really flies. I've played around with taking fry higher for the purpose of false square streams, and I can see like what really seems to be the key is to get into irregular fry first, right? So and the way you can approach that is by sort of trying to almost blow into the fry or like whisper into the fry or something like that. Probably whispering is better because that way you'll be sure to get the gap mostly between the arytenoids. So let me see if I can do that right now. Very difficult. I don't know. Something like that, right? You whisper into the fry to get it to be irregular, and then that should allow you to take it higher. Anyway, now I'm talking in vocal fry. If airy, wouldn't it be not necessarily, because well, it depends on like so you can have sort of an audible breathiness going on in flageolet as well, but that works by passing the air between the arytenoids while the vocal folds are still like squeezed very tightly shut. And if you ever have had a tone that's sort of simultaneously pressed and breathy, that's basically what's happening. Like the vocal folds are squeezed together, but there's a gap between the arytenoids. You can find that by sort of doing a pressed whisper like this. Right, and if you take that up, right, no, hang on, that's wrong. That's too much pressing. There we are. I found recently that can actually help with distortion. Hey. No, hang on. Hey. I don't know. I'm not very good at distortion. Still not. I'm not gonna do it well on the spot right now. Anyway, how to practice the F2H3 for tenor high notes. So for tenor high notes, do you mean like operatic tenor high notes? Because it's quite different from how you practice it for contemporary singing. Because for contemporary singing, you'd mostly be using it in mixed voice and in pharyngeal voice, whereas for tenor high notes, for operatic tenor high notes, you'd be doing it in chord register and in a very dark chord register, which makes it very, very, very difficult. But yeah, I like this exercise that I got from Salvatore Fisichella, which basically involves. Let me see if I can do this right now. Now, my own like operatic tenor high notes are not terribly consistent, so maybe I'm not the right person to teach you this, but. Make sure there's plenty of compression here, right? There's so that's the exercise I would recommend using. That actually went pretty well. That went better than I expected. Anyway, can you really quickly explain what F2H3 is? I don't know. That's him. Yeah. So basically, there are two resonances of the vocal tract that really influence our perception of vowel. Now, the lowest resonance you can hear pretty easily by closing the glosses and flicking the throat like this. Right. So I can change the resonance, and you can hear it shift as I flick the throat. Well, I don't know if that got cut out by my noise gate. It might have. Let me know if it did. The other one is the one associated with vowel frontness, right? That's me increasing the second formant, right? And that's the resonance you want to tune to the third harmonic, which is the octave and a fifth overnote. So if you're singing a C5 and you want that to have F2H3 tuning, then you'll want F2 to be just above G6, right? So if I sort of sweep through these sweep the second formant, I can get and then you find that sweet spot there, right? It starts pretty weak because I don't have any particularly useful resonance tuning there, right? But then when I find the resonance tuning, it's like there's a sweet spot and the sound really like gets broader and bigger and warmer and louder. Anyway, can you tell me when to use vocal compression and how to use it correctly? So it's often convenient to use for high-pitched call register, like for trained call register, because that way you can get more versatile vowels without needing to be quite as precise. Although increasingly I'm finding it unnecessary to add it even then. But if you're you might know that I distinguish between spacious and trained call register, corresponding to what I call overdrive and upper edge in CVT terms, right? Because there's this thing I call lower edge, where it has this really firm speech-like quality, like this. And this does not go higher than A4. For all that I've tried, it doesn't. Well, it can go to A half sharp. It will sort of get stuck there, right? Even the A is very difficult, right? But if I go to overdrive on the way up and then go back to edge, I can get higher, right? Right? And then I get very easy C5s. That was what gave rise to my original distinction between lower edge and upper edge. Since then, I found it convenient to just lump together upper edge and overdrive and call it call register. But I do still say that, like, for trained call register, for upper edge, it helps to have a bit of compression. And you also need some compression for mixed voice, and it can help stabilize your pharyngeal voice a bit. So yeah, and compression is part of what creates a restrained quality of mixed voice, but it doesn't have to create a restrained quality. The restrained quality also involves the vocal cord stretching and thinning, and the supraglottic impedance being lower. But yeah, do you think we can be good at singing both opera and pop and have different techniques for both? Sure. You could also have like a variation of the same technique for both, which is what I prefer, right? So when I do something like Svani per sempre il sogno mio d'amore, l'ora è fortita, is actually like, it's a variation of the same things I do for contemporary singing, right? So I'm still building everything upon this like foundation of covering the voice, right? This is like loud like that for opera, whereas for contemporary it's more like but it's the same modification, right? And as I go higher, for the operatic qualities, whereas for contemporary I wouldn't make that change until higher in pitch, like up here maybe. But again, basically the same change. So actually my technique for classical and for contemporary doesn't differ all that much. It's basically the same technique, but there's differences in how high the larynx is, whether I add nasality, how much I narrow the pharynx, and so on. So you actually don't need to really develop different techniques for both. You can just develop a very, very strong technical foundation that is sufficient for both. Have you ever tried doing overtone singing? A little bit, not really like the tuba throat singing kind, where you also do subharmonics at the same time, but just, you know, tuning F2 and like trying to mute the fundamental a little bit. I've tried that. Let me see if I can. What is the pitch I used to use for that? I don't know. I'll just do B3, probably a good bit. Let's see. not very good at it, but hopefully you could hear it a little bit. What's the best way to remove Valsalva in call register and mix toys, and how is Valsalva related to pressing? So if you have Valsalva, you basically you always have pressed phonation. Valsalva will always cause pressed phonation, but you can do pressed phonation deliberately instead of so I can do a hold like this. Hey, hey. That's not Valsalva, right? Because it's not a reaction in the throat. It's not something I'm doing with my respiratory system with the throat, then reacting instinctually. Valsalva is if I do right, and everything is coming from down here. Whereas if I do hey, then I'm starting in the throat, and it's my respiratory system that's reacting. So that's not Valsalva. But both cause pressed phonation, right? So all Valsalva is going to lead to pressed phonation, but not all pressed phonation is going to feature Valsalva. So to remove Valsalva in call register, I'd say work on your falsetto and work on this bright Disney princess-esque falsetto, right? Ha, 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 for the first time in forever, there'll be music, there'll be light. For the first time in forever, I could be dancing through the night. This kind of thing. If you can get really comfortable with that, you can just drop it an octave and do the same thing in chest register. For the first time in forever, there'll be music, there'll be light. For the first time in forever, I could be dancing through the night. And then you can just combine that with your, then you can just take that light quality into your call register, right? Very easy, right? And then you can sort of bridge that with sort of stronger call register. You can build power into it. Until you have a full dynamic range in this entire section of your voice, the whole third octave and the lower fourth octave from chest register and call register. So you can have this. Or up here. Right. And you do that by basically, work on your falsetto. Make your falsetto lighter first. And that's easier because basically you can't really press the falsetto very much. You can press it a little bit, but not much. You can't really do a Valsalva based falsetto. It just doesn't work. You're not gonna get falsetto. Anyway, do you think aggressive vocalizing exercises can help with regular singing? Yes, this is something I just concluded 2 days ago. So now I'm gonna start doing that. And I guess I can report back. I haven't really been doing much aggressive phonation, but I'm gonna start doing that on a regular basis, and I'm gonna tell you whether if it ruins my voice, you'll find out. But I don't think it will. So yeah. Any more questions? Can I imitate Ed Sheeran's voice? Not sure I can. Let me see. When he has this, the only song I really know from him is Castle on a Hill, where he has this really cool raspy voice, although it sounds a bit like a smoker's voice. I'm not sure how healthy it is because there's a lot of airflow in it, as far as I can tell. Then there's Shape of You. I don't remember all that well. Yeah, sorry, I can't. What do you think about classical singing teachers if you are afraid of compression due to subglottal pressure? I'm not sure they're actually like classical singers. They might just be like academics, academics pretending to be classical singers, sort of LARPing. Academics like to LARP a lot. it's it's you know it's a universal flaw of the species. But it's like there's always been a lot of subglottic pressure in opera. Well, not always, but there's been for like ever since like tenors sang high C's in chest voice. That's always involved a lot of subglottic pressure. Spinto tenor, it literally means like pushed tenor, right? Tenor actually comes from Latin tenere, which means to hold. Somebody who pushes while holding. Anyway, yeah, if they're afraid of subglottic pressure, they're probably they're probably charlatans, to be honest. Anyway, which is funny that I should say that, because like my own vocal technique involves a lot less subglottic pressure than most voice teachers I know. Yeah, they are. It's true. It's like and that's not just like mainstream or classical singing teachers. It's just most Danes in general. Like I don't know, something like 60% of Danes are academics. It's really like it's. I am so glad I got out. It's really just what a nightmare. Anyway, and even the people who aren't, they're still basically like part of the professional managerial class, because like occupational licensing has taken over absolutely everything in Denmark. Like the economy has gone just full totalitarian, like full, not quite full Stalin, but just like one step before full Stalin. It's like really like it's as totalitarian as an economy can be before being outright Stalinist. It's really awful. And people are praising it. People are talking about the Nordic model like it's some sort of miracle. It's really awful. It's really just almost unimaginably awful. Like, let me tell you this. It's really, really, really terrible. Anyway. Oh, some things disappeared. What happened? Anyway. Maybe that's because I have Chop Chat instead of live chat. It's funny that some of the artists I know have beautiful vocal tone and texture, but they can't hit high notes. Yeah, actually, same. It's and it's like one of my all-time favorites. Can hit high notes, but honestly he shouldn't, because they're not as good as his notes up to like G4. But he can hit a C5. This is not on par with his G4, which is like freaking legendary. He's called Tommy Kjørberg. And yeah, he sings Stadig lys i et land uten navn, gi meg liv der allting føds på ny. Anyway, he sings songs like that. This is one of his originals, and it's great. How long did it take for you to get the hang of non-valsalva choral? How was the process like? It took me a few weeks, I think, once I started doing it deliberately. But yeah, it took me a few weeks, I guess. And the process was basically, so it was during lockdown, so basically I had to sing softly, but I didn't want to like restrain my voice a lot, so I actually learned to do this relaxed soft singing, where I learned to do a very soft chord register. Yeah, there's what happened. I had to sing softly because I was singing in my apartment, because the practice rooms were closed. Ollie asks, what do you mean? I actually mean about Denmark being having a totalitarian economy. I mean, it's like there's almost no jobs you can do without some sort of occupational license. It's really like it's like that. And fairly recently, it was also very difficult to change your sphere of education. So you could just get completely screwed over. and like basically unemployable despite being very skilled. um, and I mean that's still somewhat the case actually. And there's like the housing system. There's the monetary system. Like everything in about the Danish economy is awful. It's really really awful. Anyway, while switching from falsetto to head register, what is your tongue and your upper pharynx doing? What would you recommend? Oh, good question. Actually, I don't know. Let me see. um, let's see what scale. So do I just do A sharp maybe. The tongue is dropping slightly. I'm trying to maintain the narrowing of the pharynx so that I get it into a twanged chord register instead of, twanged head register instead of a spaceless head register. I keep mixing it up with chord registers because it feels so similar. Anyway, have you ever learned EVT's gestures? Yes, but it's a while ago and I don't remember them. Let me just check my blood glucose. This doesn't feel right. Okay, 1 moment. I just gotta grab my phone. Nope, it's fine. Okay. Yeah, so I learned Estelle gestures some time ago. It was 1 year before starting at CBI, I think, and I graduated from CBT. Yeah, so it would be 5 years ago. Yeah, that seems right. 5 years ago. Yeah, it's yeah, I don't really remember any of them though. I like the concept though. Actually, that's one of the things I do like about Estelle by Swing. I actually like their general methodology for teaching. So yeah, pretty good. Would you say you need to build coordination or strength to sing high chest belts? Oh, coordination all the way. Strength can help for stamina, I'd say, but you don't really need strength just to do it. When I had diabetic ketoacidosis to the point where I got down to 47 kilograms body weight, right, and that was and I'm quite tall, so that's really very startlingly low. I looked like a skeleton, right, and I got so weak from it that I couldn't type on the keyboard without feeling like the pain from the effort of the muscle from just typing. I had trouble walking for like months, but even with that level of weakness from illness, right? Even at that level, it didn't impact my belting at all. Well, it impacted my stamina. I couldn't belt for as long as I was used to, but I could still belt as high, and it wasn't really any more difficult. So I don't think it's a strength thing. Yeah, that's what I'd say. It's What do you think of people thinking you need to have a career in singing to be a good singing teacher? I say that I can sort of follow the logic, but I also want to say that they need to get out from under a rock because like logistics in in this day and age are very difficult. Like people get their music online a lot of the time. It would be another thing prior to the invention of YouTube. Yeah, I will say though that you need to be able to sing and to sing well in order to be a good singing teacher, and you need to have some experience with like live singing, just so you know what that is, like what it's like to sing in front of an audience. You need to have done that at least a couple of times, and you need to be able to sing well and fairly consistently, right? If you're just prompted to sing on the spot, you should generally be able to do it and do a pretty good job of it. Otherwise, you're not qualified to be a good singing teacher. But as for actually like that you need to have had a career, I mean, there are so many other things that go into that than just whether you're able to sing well. Because like being a singer involves a lot more than being a vocalist. And when you go to a singing teacher, it's really mostly vocalism. You're like going there to learn, right? But for like to be a successful singer, you also need you need a certain level of looks. Like it will be a lot harder. You know, it's an unjust world we live in. It will be a lot harder if you have facial deformities, for example. It will be a lot harder if you have some really nasty chronic illness that can just mess up like your hormones in all sorts of ways at any moment, or need like you know, cause spontaneous hypoglycemia. It can be difficult in a modern economy where like the housing markets are so screwed up that you need a lot of financial success, like pretty much wherever you go, relative to where you live, in order to afford to live there. So yeah, I'd say it would have been a reasonable expectation 100 years ago. Today it's not really a reasonable expectation. But it is still a reasonable expectation that a singing teacher should be very skilled at singing. But as for actually having a singing career, it's that depends on so many other factors that it feels a little bit of like a silly expectation. Anyway, the first EVT technique I learned was to open my throat, false vocal cords, by faking a fake smile. But it didn't work for me. So you can't really retract the false folds. You can just like constrict them less, right? You can approximate them less. It's not really the false folds that are constricted. This is what it still calls it. But actually, false vocal fold constriction is a misnomer, because constriction means narrowing, and so talking about false vocal fold constriction seems to imply that the false vocal folds themselves get narrowed. But they actually just get medialized. They should call it false vocal fold medialization. And that might also have prevented CVT from picking up and running with this term uncontrolled constriction, by which they actually mean uncontrolled false fold medialization, i.e. basically Valsalva. Yeah, so so anyway, so if you want that sound, the false fold retracted sound, basically it's just about singing a bit more mellow, a bit more of a mellow fashion, right? So instead of this quality I call a driven, right? I distinguish between a driven and flowy style of singing. And driven would be if I'm doing something like have my lives in books, written pages, lived and learned from fools and from sages. You know it's true. The things come back to you. Sing with me. Right, this would be the driven quality. If I did this in the flowy style, have my lives in books, written pages, lived and learned from fools and from sages. You know it's true. All the things come back to you. Sing with me. You know, I can do belting in both styles actually, but the flowy style will sound a little bit more musical theater-esque, and the driven quality will sound a bit more rock-esque. So just sort of practice this driven which feels like sort of using effort to sustain the tone. It feels like driving the tone. That's why I call it driven. Whereas the flowy is actually like, it's a lot less subglottic pressure. You can do this crescendo dal niente, but with the breathiness beginning even at like the pianissimo, right? So, and if you can do that, that's basically the flowy style. So you can practice that, and that gives you this sort of sound that is still teachers will call false fold retraction. A teacher once told me that a vocal teacher doesn't necessarily sing better than the singer, but he or she must be able to copy their techniques. I can sort of follow that reasoning, but I disagree, because I think it's like an important part of singing tuition is to help an aspiring singer learn musicality. That is perhaps even the most important part, because that's a part you can't read from a book. At least you need a very sort of special mind to read it from a book. You actually sort of can, like you could sort of glean it from certain very good books, like The Fountainhead. That's a great book. You could glean it from. What's another book you could glean it from? I don't know. Maybe mostly The Fountainhead actually. But that's gonna require sort of very that's gonna require quite a power of abstraction and reasoning by analogy. Could you suggest what not to do with your voice? I mean, things to avoid to keep the vocal cords healthy in downtime. So this is less of a health thing, and it's more of a maintaining good technique thing. What it is to avoid squeezing spirals. So squeezing spirals are this really nasty thing where where your vocal folds sort of gradually get thinner and more squeezed. And the way it happens is if you take mixed voice too high in pitch at too quiet a volume, or too low in pitch at too loud a volume. Right, so as you go lower with mixed voice, or with any other coordination actually, it will tend to get quieter, and as you go higher, it will tend to get louder. That's just how the voice works, right? So if I do this is about the loudest that I can do mixed voice at in this range actually. No, this is, I think. But if I try to go louder than that, it's gonna lead to some trouble. But anyway, so a sort of normal volume for mixed voice, if I sing throughout a wide range, will be something like this. Right? It gets quite loud and belty at the top. You can make it quieter by various modifications. But if you just make it quieter by restraining it, by adding more restraint, you're basically squeezing the vocal folds tighter and stretching them thinner. As you go low in pitch, a too loud a volume, you might add the volume by lowering the larynx a lot and squeezing the vocal folds together a lot, but without actually getting into a chestier coordination, so to speak. And so in either case, you're sort of increasing the squeezing of the vocal folds. And as you go up in pitch, you will be stretching them more. And so your vocal folds sort of get gradually stretched thinner and more pressed. And the way to avoid that is to have a strong chest voice to land in for your lower range. So an example of a song that might cause some squeezing spirals would be Unravel from Tokyo Ghoul. Now I'm gonna transpose this down by like a tritone because I'm a pleb right now and I don't feel like singing like G5s in the squeeze mixed voice quality. But and now I'm turning to dust in a world that's twisted. Don't come searching when I go missing. Close your eyes or just try to look away. Right, so if I keep singing it like this, there's a certain risk that I'll get into a squeezing spiral, because like every time I mess something up a little bit, I will get closer to a squeezing spiral. But I can sort of reset my voice by landing in chest voice. Right, so if I do... There we go. Don't come searching... Wait, how does it go? Now I'm turning to dust in a world that's twisted. Don't come searching when I go missing. Close your eyes or just try to look away. Right, landing in this heavier quality down there is going to help me avoid a squeezing spiral, which I've sort of gotten into anyway from talking for 1.5 hours, because my speaking voice, this is actually an instructive moment. When I have dark vowels like oh, ooh, you hear that? It's like the vowel is a little bit dull. Ideally, I should do it more like oh, ooh, oh, as opposed to oh, I have too much airflow there. And it actually makes my voice a little bit hoarse when I speak for too long. It's something I'm working on, but but I've done a bad job of it today. Anyway, do you know Alex Newell? How does he sing so extremely high as a biological male? Yeah, I do know Alex Newell. Just voice feminization, just narrow the pharynx a lot, do this sort of start by doing this kind of valley girl accent and brighten that a lot, right? You can brighten it more and then soften it more, and use that to develop these really high coordinations, right? And if you just sort of develop sort of a mixed voice from that vantage point, right? So I have this quality, and then I restrain it a bit, but I still have this quality, right? And I sing that up, whoa! You know, I get this very, very light thing. And you can use that to sing really high. Now, he doesn't really restrain his voice a lot. It's more like a pharyngeal voice, I think. Could be. I don't know. It's been a while since I listened to Alex Newell. Mostly from Glee. Yeah. So in 5 minutes I will be doing this Zoom meeting. So I'm just gonna open Zoom and provide a link just in case there's a certain delay with that. Gonna deactivate use my personal meeting ID. New meeting. And I'm not really going to be active in it just yet, but I'll just send the link. Send the link here, and you can join it. I hope YouTube will allow me to send the link. It does. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'll also share it in my Discord server and tag people on this particular occasion, which I won't do in general, but these first 2 times I will. But yeah, if you have any last minute questions that you want in the live stream, like if you can't make it to the Zoom chat, for example, then ask them now. I envision that the Zoom chat will probably be less about singing. I mean, you can make it about singing as well, but just like I envision it as a kind of general purpose hangout. Wait, so just before I actually do it, is anyone interested in this Zoom chat group? Because I don't want to announce it in case like nobody shows up, and then I'll just have have this announcement. Who wants to join? Let me know in the chat. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to stay there the whole time. You can just pop in for a few minutes if you want. So yeah, it's just a Zoom group meeting. It's just like, you know, having a group chat, you know, a group call on Zoom. It's gonna be fun. Just to, you know, connect with you guys and get to know you. Can you please talk about why Harry Styles, Justin Bieber, and Darren Espanto seem to not be able to sing as brightly or as high as they used to? Is it a training issue or is it a physical limitation? It seems that Darren Espanto was a prodigious singer when he was younger, so I don't know if it would be a skill issue. Probably the larynx went down as their voices matured, and they haven't learned to like actively raise it. Right? A lot of people just let the larynx remain near its default position and don't really do much about that. They don't really learn to do any really drastic changes to the larynx position, right? Which would allow them to attain a sort of more youthful or more androgynous tone, right? But that's a skill that has to be learned, and I don't think any of those have learned that skill. Oh, can I do a girl voice? I didn't know that. I'm not sure it's quite a believable girl voice, but maybe. I can if I try to remember everything I know about how to do a girl voice, and maybe I should make it a little bit brighter like this. But yeah, it's that's about the best I can do right now, I think. And now back to my normal voice. Yeah, you get to speak English. Anyway, so oh, was that a good girl voice? I could also make it sort of more Valley Girl-esque. Like, oh my god, I can't believe he did that. Did you see? Oh my god, did you see what Becky got up to with that Dylan guy last night? Oh, that sounds really euphemistic. That sounds really suggestive. I'd better stop myself here. Anyway, plus I feel like it's sort of it's a little bit like a little bit of a sexist stereotype at this point. I need to learn how to do a mature female voice. That would be very interesting. I don't know how to do that. It's quite difficult. Anyway, I'm gonna start the Zoom meeting, which means I'm also gonna end the live stream. But I will keep it going just for a moment until some people join me on Zoom. Or maybe, well, no, because it interferes with the camera. Okay, so I won't. Anyway, I'd imagine Justin Bieber or Harry Styles is really great vocal coaching though. I doubt it. They have really fancy vocal coaches, probably. They have like expensive urban vocal coaches, which is not at all the same thing as really good vocal coaches. Like, I don't think either of them goes to Greg, for example, for voice lessons. And for like pop tenor singing, Greg is definitely the best there is. I'm almost certain that there's nobody in the world who's better for like pop tenor purposes than Greg. And I'm probably also pretty close up there. So even though I don't really specialize in pop tenor singing, so that, like that's sort of Greg's area of expertise. So he has me beat there. But I'm also pretty high up there. Anyway, anyone else wanna anyone wanna join Zoom? Hi Deb, I don't know if you can hear me. My webcam is not active just yet because I'm still on the live stream. I'm trying to see for now, but I'm trying to see if some other people wanna come hang out. Yeah, okay. So now I'm talking both to the live stream and to Deb Kumar in the Zoom meeting. Guys, join. You can join. Anyway, I'm gonna end the live stream now. So make sure you click that link, or you will miss out on like the epic banter we probably get up to. I hope to see you all there, or at least some of you. Yeah, I'm gonna click this stop streaming now. So take care.